How's it going, everybody? It's RC Maxfield here for the Back to 12 podcast, and in today's video, we'll tell you who the new interim head coach is for Texas Tech while Mark Adams is suspended up at the Big 12 tournament. We'll also preview the Big 12 tournament as the Texas Tech Red Raiders are trying to go bid stealing, and the only way that they'll make the NCAA tournament is if they win the whole damn thing up in Kansas City. But we'll preview game number 1 for Texas Tech as they face off against the Mountaineers of West Virginia. Let's jump into it, though. Lay the groundwork for the situation in terms of why Texas Tech needs an interim head coach. If you've been living under a rock for the past couple of days, Mark Adams has been suspended, according to Texas Tech, due to using inappropriate language, using slaves and masters in a Bible verse towards a Texas Tech player. That Texas Tech player reported it to a coach. The coach then went up and reported it to AD Kirby Hocutt. Either side of the story you're on, it doesn't really matter. Texas Tech has an interim head coach, and it will be Corey Williams. Corey Williams is one of the most highly regarded assistant coaches, not only in the Big 12, but I thoroughly believe across the country. He has a laundry list of accolades that make him more than ready for this opportunity for Texas Tech. I mean, shoot, he was the head coach at Stetson for 6 years. He's played in the NBA alongside some of the greatest of all time, including Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, where he won a ring with the Chicago Bulls back in 1993. He knows the Big 12 very well as he went to Oklahoma State. He is very qualified, and not to mention, I guess his son is on the team as well, in Corey Williams Jr. But I don't think a lot's going to change here. Maybe there's a little pep in the step from the player side of it. But I do think Corey Williams will allow these guys to play the way that they are capable to play. Now, what does that look like? I'm not sure. Texas Tech hasn't been, great by any means up in Kansas City historically, outside of, a run here and a run there. I mean, last year was the first time that they made the Big 12 tournament final in Kansas City outside of, I think, 1 year prior, 20 years ago. So you look at what Texas Tech has done, and it hasn't been a great historical, relevant, accolade-filled time up in Kansas City, but who knows? Obviously they have something to play for now, but maybe they just band together, and that's kind of what I'm thinking happens here, is these guys just band together, and they just they just go in there and say narratives are narratives, and we're going to go out there and just ball with our brothers for one last time, potentially. Who knows? This could be the last time that they get to play with Kevin O'Banner. Could be the last time that they all play together on one team, right? So I'm looking at it from that perspective, and I think that there's also, a little bit of bad blood between these two schools in West Virginia and Texas Tech. I don't think it's a fierce rivalry by any stretch of the imagination. But I just don't think these are two teams that really like each other too much. And I think it's going to be interesting to see. You think about it, West Virginia has taken Texas Tech out of the Big 12 tournament in 2019 and 2018, arguably the two greatest seasons in Texas Tech men's program history, right? And so you look at what Texas Tech has to play for now, and maybe there's a little bit of revenge narrative on there. But the guy that you're going to have to stop on the West Virginia side, as we all know, is Erik Stevenson. And that's kind of where I want to start, because Erik Stevenson has just been, it just feels like he's been sensational against the Red Raiders. Texas Tech struggles against those three-point marksmen, and Stevenson is definitely one of those guys. He averages 15.5 points per game. Remember that game up in Morgantown where Texas Tech did win? It was a battle between him and Jalen Tyson. Jalen Tyson and the Red Raiders got the better end of that deal up in Morgantown to keep their NCAA tournament hopes alive at that point. But now it looks like the Mountaineers are firmly in the NCAA tournament, and Texas Tech is going to need a damn near miracle to get into the field of 68. But looking at it from what we need to watch in this one, it's going to be the bigs again, I think, for Texas Tech that really dictate what Texas Tech can do here. I expect a big Fardaws game, but also really what I want to see is how much more free-flowing Texas Tech is offensively. Do they really just push the envelope and say, hey, we really are just playing with house money here in terms of we've got nothing to lose but everything to gain, almost, in a way? I know that doesn't really make sense to some degree, but you can play free because the odds are so stacked against you to make the NCAA tournament. You can just go out there and be yourself, right? And I think that's what Texas Tech is going to do. So some of the matchups I'm watching here for Texas Tech is going to be Fardaws and Trey Mitchell. Fardaws should dominate this matchup. I just don't think Trey Mitchell can guard Fardaws. But I do think when you look at the matchups elsewhere around the floor and how they get Fardaws involved. The key one being is this. You'd think it'd probably be De'Vion Harmon. I don't think so. I think it's going to be Pop. And how does West Virginia attack Pop? Remember, last time that Pop played West Virginia, it was his first game back from an injury. He had an ankle injury. He was working his way back. He made a couple shots, but now he's fully healthy. How does West Virginia navigate guarding a guy that really stretches the floor for the Red Raiders? And by stretching the floor like Pop does, I think it could give easier post touches for Fardaws and even Kevin Obanor on the opposite block. This will allow Texas Tech to really force their will down low. Now, obviously, easier said than done. No doubt about it. But that's the matchup I'm watching strictly on Pop because he does allow Texas Tech to really open things up and create a little bit more space. I would not be surprised at all if you see Fardaws and Pop on the same side of the floor because the West Virginia Mountaineer defender will have to scoot out a little bit because we all know that Pop loves to shoot it from about 47.5 feet. And by no means is that a diss. He can make it too, right? So they're going to have to stretch out a little further, meaning that Pop can either dump it into Fardaws on the block or De'Vion can dump it in at the top of the key to him, right? This will allow a little bit more space, a little bit more free-flowing movement, and we know that Fardaws is a very good passer. So I think this would allow Kevin Obanor to screen or cut baseline to the basket, This would allow a streaking Jalen Tyson from the opposite arc to beeline to the rim for rebounding opportunities, for cuts as well in terms of rim runs, right? So you have opportunities here if you're Texas Tech offensively. Now, defensively, this is where things get interesting because West Virginia had a couple of guys that scored 20-plus points against you. Obviously, the main one is Eric Stevenson. If you can make Eric Stevenson uncomfortable, that's a win for me, right? I think you have to make sure, if you're Texas Tech, that you know where he is at all times. And I'm interested to see what the defensive schemes look like. Do they stay to those no middle base principles? Or do they say, screw it, we're going to go man and we're just going to have somebody on Stevenson the whole time and not allow them to shoot? This is where things get interesting to me because, again, Mark Adams was dead set on running a no middle. I get it. That's what's made this program great in a lot of ways, right? But you just don't have the personnel. And I wonder now with new interim head coach Corey Williams there, do they just say, screw it, we're going to run man, we're going to run zone, we're going to press you, we're going to hybrid press, we're going to soft press you, we're going to half court press you? Are we going to do all of these things? I would not be shocked at all if Texas Tech comes out and runs a 3-2 offense or defense, and even a 2-3 quite a bit to make sure that they are close to the shooters on the perimeter for West Virginia. If West Virginia is going to beat you, I want them to have to beat you by going inside and making sure that they get hard contested shots from Fardaws, Kevin Obanor, Jalen Tyson, Robert Jennings, whoever it may be, Daniel Bacho as well. I want them to have to beat you that way, and I expect Texas Tech to have to do that. Now, in terms of the odds and everything, they aren't out at the time of this video, but if you have to ask me, I bet West Virginia is probably favored in this one when it's all said and done by about 3.5, 4 points up in Kansas City. I'm RC Maxfield. One more question before you get out of here. Give me those score predictions for West Virginia and Texas Tech. It'll be the first game of the Big 12 tournament, the Phillips 66 Big 12 tournament, up in Kansas City. Let me know your score predictions and if Texas Tech will face off against the Kansas Jayhawks in the second round of the tournament. That would be their matchup, and we all know that Kansas has a very, very big home court advantage up there in Kansas City. I am RC Maxfield reminding you, if you want the latest breaking news when it comes to Texas Tech athletics, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button and hit the bell while you're at it too for your one-stop shop right here for Texas Tech all year long right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel.